Hello everybody. Today I want to talk to you about my pre-modern collection. So, as you know, I usually sort my cards based on color. So this is the first binder. It contains white, green and blue cards. And a little disclaimer here, my pre-modern collection is not nearly as impressive as the old school 93-94, the video of which you can find on this channel. And this happens because of two reasons. So number one is that I didn't really heavily invest into Premodern, and mainly because, I didn't play it so much. I never had the time for Premodern. Now I even barely have the time for playing old school, but the tournaments, for example. And also Premodern is much more difficult to complete just because of the number of cards, and perhaps it's not necessarily as satisfying because yes, there are some incredibly expensive cards, some reserved list stuff. There's also some stuff that is just very easy to pick up, and it gets reprinted nowadays even with old borders, old frames. So I'm not entirely sure that I'm going to continue that, and I'm afraid that sometimes I might even sell some of these cards. So here it is. In any case, there are also some cards that I had from back in the day, when I played, not necessarily pre-modern, maybe old Type 2 simply, or kitchen table magic. So there's some very good times when just my friend and I would bring like 5 or 6 decks, and some of them would be pre-modern, some of them just kitchen table magic, some of them would be old Type 2, and we would just battle for several hours, sometimes going very deep in the night, using those decks. Many of them are not incredibly viable and tournament worthy, but yes, they still contain our favorite cards, so always a pleasure to play. So without any further ado, let's just look at the card that we've got here. So as you understand, Premodern is the format that contains cards essentially from 95 to 2003, but of course we will see some of the older cards here. So sometimes I had the duplicates of let's say Spirit Link over here from Legends, Italian Legends that is, and of course I will also have the 7th edition. So 7th edition is such an interesting edition. This is the last white-bordered edition, as you very well know, and the last core set that had the old frame, the last essentially pre-modern core set. And when it came out, there was a love and hate relationship with this set. Many people hated the art. It kind of showed us the change in the art direction towards more, I don't know, maybe realistic or maybe just comic book style art. And nowadays it's actually quite popular. It's actually quite I would say sought after. So for example, Birds of Paradise from the 7th edition foil, as you know, it's really not something that can be ignored by collectors. I'm not going, of course, to show each and every card, but just want to show you that yes, I would have some of the older cards, some of the newer cards. Some of them I would get essentially to construct some kind of a card pool. So some of the cards, it was really a very long process. I would look at different sets, I would look at different cards to see what are some of the staples in some decks, maybe in Type 2 decks, because when I started collecting these things, there weren't necessarily even talks of Premodern. So maybe it did exist, but we didn't really know about that. So yes, sometimes I would just put together some things, and I would look at some popular cards, I would look at some perhaps CDH staples and such. So this is what we have here. Most of these cards, as you will see, do have the old frame, so they're pre-modern legality, as you understand, is not about the frame. It's not old school, right, where you would be at least laughed at, or maybe you would get a much worse reaction if you try to show up with a new frame card for understandable reasons. But here you can, and quite a lot of people actually do play such things as this internal dragon reprint. I don't really like it, but it's not that I would kick out those cards out of my binder, and just specifically replace them with the older versions, even though I did try to upgrade them. So here you will also see some foils, because in Premodern we do have foils, and I really like foils, to be honest with you. Not something that you can say in old school setting, but yeah, I did sometimes try to get foils. For example, this Golden Wish, it's quite an interesting card. Maybe a bit overcosted, but yes, getting the foil of it, I think, is quite nice. And we also did have, as you remember, time shifted those time spiral cards, and mind you, these were just regular boosters, so you would get one rare and one time shifted card. And it's insanely good by modern standards, you know, it's not an overpriced booster or anything. Such a great set. I actually played the pre-release of Time Spiral. And it's crazy to think that when we played Time Spiral, Magic was only 13 years old. And now it is, you know, more than twice as old. Yeah, so time just flies by, but you know it very well, of course. In any case, here we also can see some shadow guys. You can see the Enduring Renewal card, and you might have seen a video with this card as the main combo piece on my channel. So I just played an Enduring Renewal, of course, with Ornithopter and, you know, the Ashnod's Altar card. So a lot of fun there. Some of these cards I still haven't played, unfortunately. You know, I just tried to put some things together, but never actually worked. It either never worked or I just didn't have any kind of a slot for this card. So anyway, as you will have noticed, I basically tried to pick some more or less famous cards from different colors. You know, nothing crazy again. Not going to see any card that I believe is more expensive than $10 even. Maybe not even $5, to be honest with you. But in any case, I tried to select some cards that would represent the color the best. And I also tried to sometimes reconstruct the decks that I had back in the day. So one of such decks is Rebels. So Rebels was actually my very first pre-constructed deck. And, you know, back when I was 13 years old, my very first product was the 6th edition 2-player starter. And, of course, you can imagine that you couldn't go really far with that thing. But I still believe maybe I won a couple of games in my whole life with those decks that I tried to build out of that set. But after that, I just got lucky because I bought a pre-constructed Rebels deck. You know, all I could do was just look at this, you know, cover of the deck. I believe I still have the box, but it's quite far away from where I live now. So in any case, I do technically own it, but I cannot show you. But in any case, I just wanted to say that, yes, I just looked at different decks. So when I started to play, Prophecy was the most recent set. So of course, Mercadian Masks were around, and pre-cons from that set were available. So what I wanted to do is that I just wanted to look at different decks and see what might be interesting. And I just looked at this, you know, White Winnie, and I thought, okay, it's probably fine to play that, because they were talking about, you know, win-win situations or something like this, and a bit interesting stuff. So anyway, I just went ahead and I bought it. I didn't understand, you know, that Rebels themselves are actually quite an interesting mechanic. I couldn't look at the, you know, card list, at the deck list, because to be honest, you didn't have the internet access back then, which sounds crazy, but yeah. You know, I would actually ask my dad when he went to work to download some pages about Magic for me, you know, such as the Dojo decks, some local websites, and you know, he would just download some tournament reports and deck lists and such. So yeah, but and I would read it, of course, in the, you know, offline mode. Interesting things as well. So in any case, long story short, I bought the Rebels deck, and it didn't disappoint, because I was able to play, you imagine what kind of a setting we actually had, right? So we had a Mercadian Masks block, and the previous block before that was Urza's block. So Urza's and Mercadian Masks, as you understand, this was quite a crazy type 2 setting. It wasn't, you know, for weak noobs such as myself, you know. And this is really just lucky that I this Rebels deck, because Rebels deck is just a typical weenie deck with some twist, but essentially you technically could just overrun your opponent if they didn't draw into their combo, or if they were playing some kind of slow control that couldn't do much against just a lot of creatures. And with this $10 deck, I just was able to defeat some of the you know, older guys, and it was quite a happy coincidence. It was just beginner's luck, because after that, you know, I bought one more precon, which was Tombstone from Urza's Saga, and that precon was really miserable, because the idea was that you would cycle some cards that are of, you know, questionable value, such as, I don't know, we had a 2/3 Flying Drake for 5 with cycling 2, something like that. And then we had some reanimation spells, of course not the best ones either. And yeah, it looked good on paper, but it never worked. So I believe I never won using that deck. And then I tried just to buy some singles from local players who would of course rip me off. My very first trade was a counter spell and boomerang for some Vyoshino crappy uncommon from or maybe even common, I don't remember, from the Urza's block. So yeah, a lot of terrible stories. I just decided that I wouldn't want to play blue anymore, and yeah, so this is what usually happened when you had some kid, you know, those card sharks would just come up to you, and they would, you know, kindly trade something that you didn't need, but they did need, so yeah. Anyway, just, you know, Rebels. This is what I was talking about, that yes, this was my very first deck, and it was quite a lucky choice. So Wall of Glare always seemed almost broken to me, because, you know, it may block any number of creatures each combat. That's amazing. And then you can put something on it to prevent damage, and you know, it almost seemed broken to me. So yeah, little did I know, actually. But again, this is the Ali from Cairo effect. Basically, when you think that some defensive cards, you tend to overvalue them, right? And this one, Entangler, may block any number of creatures. A bit on the expensive side, and again, it's just an aura, but again, prophecy, so no wonder, all right? And yes, speaking of Rebels, I just wanted to show you this Rebel, who wasn't even the most expensive Rebel, but I mean, it was the rare for that pre-con. And yeah, in case you don't remember, Rebels basically are famous for searching the card that is 1 mana more expensive. So meaning that this guy who costs 5 can search a Rebel that costs 6 by paying 7. So there is a kind of a you know, value added 1 extra mana that you need to pay to use this ability, but it's usually worth it. And yeah, this way, for example, you could search this guy, and it is just a massive creature, right? So some Rebels couldn't search other Rebels, but there were some Rebels that were required. So of course, later on in Nemesis we got Linsevi, and Linsevi was even banned. So it's a creature that didn't do much, but it was still banned just because of how good and you know, prevalent it was. So yeah, essentially very often people just use this Falcon. They don't necessarily use the 1 mana Rebel, but you know, starting with Falcon, you can go up very quickly. And you know, later on I also had counter Rebels, quite an interesting thing, right? So yes, I can of course talk for ages about each of those cards. So I just wanted to say that yes, we do have different editions here. We've got foils, we've got non-foils, we've got some cards that I got earlier, some cards that I got later, and overall there's just a lot of interesting things. Especially if you have the nostalgia factor. If you don't have it, then yes, it's going to be pretty ordinary. You know, it's quite an interesting thing. You really have to have this presence. You should have experienced at least those sets, not necessarily those cards, just that era. Because, you know what's interesting? There's a kind of a blind spot in my personal Magic history, because yes, I have told most of my viewers, of course. I grew up with the Chandelier game that I started playing back when I didn't even have magic cards, and they weren't even officially sold over here. But the idea is that I couldn't just even know anything about the newer sets, so I was kind of limited. I was confined to those cards that we had, and the cards were, of course, the old school cards in that Chandelier game. And later on I started to play, as I told you, so 6th edition, Prophecy, Mercadian Masks. Yes, I did know something about Urza's block, and we had quite a lot of cards of Urza's. And even the Tempest block, you know, it was quite a good block. I already could understand that. But it wasn't something that was easy to obtain. I mean, you couldn't buy boosters of Tempest, and it was in summer 2000, as you can figure out. And essentially, you know, this block of Tempest, Stronghold, and Exodus was not available, and everything. But we still saw just some cards that people played, and the cards that came before that, so like the Mirage block, it was completely in my blind spot. So I didn't have any contact with it through digital magic. I didn't have any contact with it through you know, paper magic. And yes, while there are some nice cards like City of Solitude, some of the Jinns and such, I do appreciate those cards, but it's not that I ever wanted to get them, you know. So I believe that this is how many players can feel about pre-modern or maybe even old school if they never experienced that. Yes, these are old cards. Maybe, I don't know, people want Black Lotus, they want Moxen, they want some other crazy expensive cards, but the other cards, I believe that it's all quite subjective. So there's one more thing to think about, and we actually discussed it with a lot of different players and collectors, you know, what's going to happen to those cards, you know, later on when we have basically not so many people who are interested in it just because of, you know, nostalgia for something that they have experienced previously. So I don't know, but in any case, here you have got, I believe this is Battle Royale, if I'm not mistaken, from 2000. So no symbol here, as you can see. Return target creature card from your graveyard to play. Yes, let us move on. So what can we talk about here? Yeah, so again, here we have got some old school cards, some of the extras. Now, this is a card that I also believe to be broken because, again, as I told you, we tended to overvalue some defensive cards and the cards that seemingly made you invulnerable. So this is Story Circle. Story Circle, number one, I didn't really understand the difference between colorless mana and white mana. Now I certainly do. So this limits this card insanely, as you understand. And also, of course, we understand that your opponent can have some colorless sources of damage. Your opponent can maybe even try to mill you. Your opponent can have more than one color, or they can just disenchant the Story Circle. But, you know, in kitchen table magic, though, when we played it, it really was a busted card. So you would just put it on the table. Your opponent is playing pre-sideboard. Maybe they don't even have a sideboard when we're playing casual games. And yes, no way to deal with this Story Circle. You just render them helpless. And by the way, in case you haven't noticed there, just having fun with these random colors. So that's the Story Circle they've got. Anyway, quite a curious card, right? Doesn't seem that impressive nowadays, but still not that bad. Also, you know, just talking about the blocks that I like. So what is my favorite pre-modern block? If I wanted to tell you just something random, I would say that that is Odyssey. Because Odyssey was the time that I played paper magic the most. So we had an LGS, I guess you can say, but it wasn't more than just a kind of a basement. And this was a basement in a, let's just say, not such a not such an important district of our city, and you know, if you went there in the evenings, you know, people were sometimes mugged, as I heard. Never happened to me. But, you know, cards have been stolen, some other stuff happened. You would just, you know, it was, these were the wild days, basically. And not so rich, obviously. But what I wanted to say is that, yes, I would go there pretty much every day. You know, I was finishing school then, and I just could go to the LGS like 3 or 4 times a week. You know, it's crazy to think like that, because nowadays you're happy if you have got even one day off when you don't have anything to do. But yes, those were completely different days, and sometimes you think back and you believe that you might have wasted some time. But in any case, I'm rambling too much again about all of those things. I just wanted to say that I really, really loved Odyssey block, because it has got Threshold, it has got, of course, there was Torment with Madness mechanics. I put up my very first more or less tournament-worthy Blue-Green Madness deck, so I really, really enjoyed that era, personally. And you know, when the next block came, which was obviously the Onslaught block, I was a bit disappointed, because yeah, it was a creature-based tribes, stuff like that. I don't know. I still played Magic, you know, so these were the most active days for me. And of course I also love Urza's block. Onslaught block, it kind of grew on me, now I also like it, but I can't say that I'm super crazy about it. Scourge is my favorite set from that block. Well, this is obviously the very last Premodern set, at least, you know, if we just talk about expansions. So Dawn Elemental was quite an interesting card, and you know, I believe that back then we already started to get some sort of a power creep. We started to get stronger creatures, I believe, which became a trend, of course, later on. So this card also looked quite quite powerful to me, you know. Prevent all damage, flying 3/3. When Invasion came out, though, I wasn't that happy about it. Invasion seemed like a set which I thought was a bit overcomplicated. Maybe there were just too many things in one card, and Kicker, I didn't really appreciate it. And the worst thing about Invasion is that, you know, I didn't understand much about, you know, those blocks, about Type 2, rotation and such stuff. But I clearly remember that when Invasion came out, it pushed away my Tombstone deck, so I couldn't play with Urza's cards. I couldn't play Type 2. I still played casual games, so I shouldn't have worried about it, but yeah. Anyway, alliances, as you will have noticed, I don't have that many alliances cards. I actually have quite a lot of 95 cards, but this is because there was, and there still are, by the way, some old school 95 events where we just play 93, 95, but also there is 94 and 95, so yeah, that's why I specifically got some extra 95 stuff. But again, I said 95 and not 96, so I'm talking about Ice Age and Homelands, not about alliances. So alliances you will not see that much here. Next, so yes, Linsivy. I used to have a foil Linsivy, and it was one of those things that I bought, I believe, for $14, and then those things just skyrocketed, and I didn't really sell it, but I traded it and cash for a drop of honey, a signed copy, and you know, in retrospective, it's maybe not such a great deal, because I bought it when cards were really spiking. Now they're somewhat cheaper, so perhaps today I could have got the same card for the same amount of money minus Linsivy foil, but anyway, I do not regret that. There are some Japanese cards, as you will have noticed, and specifically we have got this one, and you know, I can read sorcery, okay, I can read you know, Kuricha and such. So yes, especially katakana, but you know, I tried, and I am still trying to learn Japanese a little bit, but yeah, it is difficult, especially reading, of course. So anyway, you know, basically I can talk about each of those cards because most of them do carry some kind of history. I do have some decks associated with them. So again, we have got this guy that I really liked. He is a rebel, so I really like that. And when I was playing this rebel deck, there was a very interesting strategy that you could use, because the legend rule, as you know, was completely different. It did change several times. So back when we were playing this, what you could do is that you could essentially put a card into play in response. So if your opponent, for example, is playing Chumano Revolutionary, then you would, in response, search your deck for this Chumano Revolutionary, and of course, this action would resolve first, and then your opponent's creature would be sacrificed as it enters play. So that's crazy, because you know, legends counted for the whole battlefield, not only for one specific player, and also there was the idea of the first legend. So it's like the presence of master, you know. So when you already have it, no further legends so with the same name can be played. And this is a very flavorful and nice rule, but the problem is that, you know, in Kamigawa they decided to change it because there was the legendary theme. There were a lot of legends, and the idea of most of these cards just sitting on the table was not that appealing to players, so that's why they changed it. But I do remember this legendary rule. It's not the very first legendary rule. I believe the very first legendary rule in Legends was that you could only have one copy of this legend in your deck, period. Yes. We can also discuss stamps, right? So how do you personally feel about stamps? Do you have any stamped cards that would be interesting? You know, of course, I remember that I was buying Warship, several copies. And when I got this particular copy, I was a bit disappointed because, yes, I saw this stamp that I hadn't been warned about. It was listed just as Warship, and I really didn't like this stamp. But now that I look back at these stamps, you know, each of them actually carries a story. There are some very interesting stamps that come from a particular event. And when I look back on them, you know, there was one stamp with the name of the company that ran a lot of some board games clubs and just local game stores. This company is long gone, but I still have the stamped card from a particular event hosted by this company. So, you know, these things change in many interesting ways, and their value also does change. Next, yeah, I would sometimes just get some more or less weird things. So, for example, this one, Knighthood, I would just sometimes look at some of the older sets, see what the cheaper foils are, and would just get them for the collection. They still look nice in my opinion. Foils were incredibly rare, as you remember, I hope. And nowadays, you know, foil premium can even be sometimes below 1. Meaning that foil multiplier, right, is basically non-existent foil premium. But yes, back in the day, I believe you had the 1 to 100 ratio foils. So essentially you would get a foil in every 6th pack, if my math is correct here. Then they changed it. I believe it would be a foil in each 4th pack. So in any case, and this could have been any kind of a foil, right? And look at how well these foils are looking now, you know? It's not Pringles that we've got nowadays. I do realize that here we have got the foiling only of the frame, not of the picture, so maybe this does change the things. But still, most of those foils, may, of course, may have clouding. I didn't necessarily go for near mint copies. But still, I believe that they look good, they're gorgeous, they're rare, and when you opened the foil, it was really an event. It was something to be happy about. Yes, here, so again, more Rebels. Another deck that I played was Astral Slide. I didn't play it back in the day, but I played it, as kitchen table magic thing. And this one I actually played in Blue-Green Madness. I would just try to discard it and then play the sideboard for 1 green, destroying Worship, of course. Here we have got, so this guy was late Rebel, by the way. About Rebels, there's one interesting thing, we somewhat, wait, okay, so, I told you that my collection is not that well maintained when it comes to Premodern, sadly, right, so Pariah was also somewhere here, it's like that memory game where you should remember which cards you have seen and in which position. But anyway, I just wanted to say that Rebels essentially are now erased from your memory, because we have got a Rebel in red. So number one, Rebels weren't typically red. And number two is that it didn't have any interaction. Basically, it was a named Rebel. This is what I wanted to say, but it's not a Rebel. So something like this happens, that they're basically trying to, I don't know, make you forget that Rebels were a thing, that they had this specific ability. There's no conspiracy here, of course, but we simply can say that, this is a maybe sign of disrespect, or maybe just people didn't care about what happened a long time ago, and they're not planning to bring Rebels back. Who knows? So yeah, actually the reason why we have so many foil Rebels is that sometime in the past I made an all foil Rebel deck. I had those things, an all Premodern and all old school deck. Even before I cared about those formats, I just played kitchen table magic. So I just had an all foil Rebel deck, and it was amazing. It was amazing to play. I got these cards, even Foil Crusade from this, GSS, I believe it's called, is also from that particular deck. I did play some of the modern cards there as well, such as Training Grounds, which make your activated abilities of creatures 2 mana cheaper, which, as you can imagine, is crazily good. People didn't like that deck, to be honest with you. Then I just, downsized to an all-white deck when I went all Premodern. So yeah, at a particular moment in time, I did have an all-foil Premodern deck. And these guys were also very nice. There's Nightwing Glider and Thermal Glider. I didn't even play them sideboard, just a nice thing. And yes, I also had Mirror Entity, but again, that's not Premodern anymore. Yes, so always interesting to see those cycles, cycle of Black Knight and White Knight. Much later was complemented by Silver Knight and I believe Plague Knight, but I might be wrong. But there was certainly some kind of a counterpart in black to that knight. And now we proceed to green, okay? So, by the way, talking about, the most expensive card in this collection, I believe this might be it. This might be it, due to obvious reasons. Can't really check, not planning on selling it, but maybe. I will probably look into that. Again, as I told you, this one is rather flexible. It's not a complete collection. It's just basically a card pool. Some of these cards are very dear to me, just because of the events that are associated with them, just because of the memories of how I played these cards. So really not much to talk about. Yes, so here we have got elves, right? So elves is another archetype that I played. I played Pauper Elves. Actually, this was my very, I believe, first and last. Yeah, this was the only time that I played Pauper. And yeah, I actually finished, I believe, in top 4, maybe top 8, I don't remember. But yeah, I got something very interesting, which I will show you in a different binder. And just an interesting lesson of life, I would say, which is even more than the card itself. So yes, in any case, elves, yes, I like them. I like them in the past, and I still do like this archetype. But you know, this modern elves with survival of fittest, this is probably too much for me. Oath of Druids, nice card, never actually played it. This orangutan, no comment. Some elves. Elvish Spirit Guide I got specifically for the deck that I was playing. So, you know, you cannot really quit Magic, as many people say. If you quit, you still go back. And my most active years of playing Magic, as I told you, were, of course, when I played the Chandlar game in 98, I believe. I played most of it. Maybe 2000 as well, and in 2000 I started playing paper Magic, 2001 too. Then I went on some kind of a hiatus, then I got back again, 2005, started playing, maybe not so much, but still Ravnica was a good set, good block, loved by many, myself included. Then I got kind of out of Magic. I would just sometimes play Magic when I traveled, and always great experience. Played it in France, played it in London. Always a lot of pleasure, and even if I didn't play, I would just buy cards, no matter where I went. So this was very nice. And in addition to that, I just wanted to say that, yeah, we were talking about Elvish Spirit Guide. Yeah, for some time, maybe somewhere around 2006, I just quit Magic for somewhere around 5 years, we could say, or maybe 4 years. So I quit Magic for a very long time. And it's not that I quit it officially, I still had my binder. I didn't play that much. I played with my wife. We just played some kitchen table Magic, but really not for that long. And then it kind of disappeared. You know, it's not that you officially say, oh, I quit Magic. You know, when such very strong emotions are involved, you're actually not going to quit Magic. You know, when you have a love and hate relationship. So love and hate are much more similar to each other than love and just this indifference, the feeling of absolutely not caring. So this is how it usually happens, you know, that you actually stop playing. So yes, but then you know, I got, interestingly enough, back into WoW TCG. So this was the, of course, predecessor of Hearthstone, as you might have heard. So World of Warcraft trading card game, and my friend and I just bought a display, meaning a booster box, and we just played it a lot. And then you know, we invited some friends along, and some people were also interested in Magic. So that's what was interesting. And you know, I just kind of wanted to go back to Magic, and I couldn't keep up with the rotation. I already back then understood that this is a losing game. At least this is what I believe now still. You know, following all of these rotations and stuff. But I mean, if you enjoy it, that's good. But you know, if you only play so often, then it would be very, very expensive to just buy all of the newer stuff and stop caring about the old stuff. That's not for me. And I just want to say that I decided to go back into playing Eternal formats, and those formats was, of course, Legacy. So for Legacy, I specifically bought Elvish Spirit Guide. So Elvish Spirit Guide is a card that is, of course, very iconic. It's very interesting in terms of what it can do. We have got, of course, the Simic, not Simic, definitely. Simic is green and blue. Simian, the red one, Spirit Guide, the counterpart of this card that can give you red mana. And I just played this deck in. I just played this card in a Goblin Charbelcher deck. So Goblin Charbelcher, in case you don't know, is a card from Premodern that can essentially kill your opponent as soon as it comes into play and is activated. Simply because you will make sure that the number of lands that you reveal to your opponent while activating it, because it does the amount of damage to your opponent, or to any target, I believe, based on the number of cards, non-land cards that you're going to reveal from the top of your library. So usually in the deck you will have one or maybe 0 sometimes, but sometimes 2 lands, and these would be duels. And using this great card land grant, you would make sure that you would get this forest, you know, and so here's a land grant, right? You've got still some combo pieces. And of course, one of the most important pieces there was Lion's Eye Diamond, which I traded with some great profit, to be honest with you. If we compare it to the time when I bought it in 2009. So yeah, this was 2009, I think, that I made this deck. I bought a lot of stuff. I bought, as I told you, Lion's Eye Diamond and basically everything for the Goblin Charbelcher. And I also bought Tiger and Bayou, right? Just for peanuts. It was very cheap. But yeah, later on I did sell some of those cards. I did trade them. But yeah, some of these things I buy listed for my currently most valuable cards, such as the Collector's Edition Power 9 and some duels and such. Yeah, Collector's Edition Power 9 sounds terrible now, doesn't it? You know, with Magic 30 and everything, and with people losing confidence. And, some people didn't like it in the first place, I do understand that, meaning the Collector's Edition, but yes. And yeah, sometimes I would just get those promos. I love the iconic art, of course. There's the original art for Giant Growth, and maybe I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of this particular art. I still respect it and love it. So here we have also got, I can talk about this one, the Mongoose. Again, as I told you, Odyssey is the dearest block to me in Premodern, just because of how much I played it. I bought this mono green. It was not blue and green, it was just mono green Odyssey Precon. I did buy a lot of Precons, to be honest with you. Some of them were abysmal, like this Tombstone deck. Another deck was very bad. It was the red and blue deck, which tried, you know, to play some kind of counter burn, but it contained some terrible creatures, and it did some, you know, whirlpool or something. Don't even remember what the name was. So terrible, terrible deck. So I can easily say that most decks I bought were pretty bad, but there were some good ones. Some of them were average, but again, why did I buy them? You know, I could have easily bought singles, but buying singles was not that easy because of supply and demand. And you know, before the days of the internet, we did have some online shops, some online stores, but they were incredibly expensive. I couldn't really order from big stores like Troll and Toad. Troll and Toad was my very first shop that I, you know, used. What was it? No, I even believe it was MTG Fnatic. I completely forgot. So MTG Fnatic was the first one. We'll talk about it in the future, maybe. And you know, there are some cards that you like just because of the memories that are associated with them, and not even necessarily playing those cards, but how you got them. So this Korean Dryad, of course, when I purchased it then didn't purchase it, I traded it in 2009. This card had already been pretty much obsolete. People didn't care about it. It wasn't great. You know, Tarmogoyf was a thing already, so who cared about this Dryad? Not many people, to be honest with you. But I had heard of the Dryad. I had heard of the Miracle Grow deck, you know, with the blue and some other colors. Or maybe it was just 2 colors, I don't remember exactly. But in any case, it grew very quickly, and it was very efficient. So, yeah. And I just traded some of the stuff that I had, some of the newer cards actually, for these Marvelous Dryad in France, when I just visited it for a conference, and it was nice. So I still like it. I'm not going to trade it. Why should I? You know, even it was worth more than what it is worth now, especially in that condition. But yeah, Moment's Peace I always enjoyed. Such an interesting card. And so is the Ranger, you know. So you know, do one good thing as a cost for another good thing, it's amazing, right? Because returning a forest, yeah, it kind of slows you down, but sometimes you can even return a forest and play it again, and maybe you don't have that much mana on the table that many lands. So it's insane. It's insanely good. Cabal Fist of Crossup, people often touted this card, but I never got into it, never liked it. Yeah, this is basically his sibling in some way, even though it's an insect, so that's a tiny drawback, of course. And, you know, return an elf to untap target creature. That's insane. That's insane. You can even do that. You know, you can do it on your opponent's turn, you can do it on your own turn. You can do it in response to your opponent trying to destroy your elf. How good is that? And it doesn't even say top target elf. And yeah, so what I usually disliked about the newer sets is that, you know, everybody knew about the iconic cards. And when you saw a kind of an attempt to nerf a card, to kind of, you know, bring it down, a card that already existed, I usually didn't appreciate that. So we've got this Utopia tree. What kind of bird of paradise is that? You know, so 0-2, first of all, it's an ugly combination of power and toughness. It's nothing. Might have made it 0-1 as well. Still, it's not a blocker. It cannot survive a shock. Completely irrelevant, this 1 point of toughness. And cannot even fly. Insane. So bad. I hated those things. I hated them, really. And Biorhythm was a very popular thing, to be honest with you. People played it in elves, you know, never really got into that, honestly. Yeah, there are some cards that you will see that I got as a kind of a, maybe collection. I had a collection of Drakes, I had a collection of Walls, but yes, we will look at it maybe a little bit later. Tinderwall is not from one of those collections though, because it was a part of this Goblin Charbelcher deck I had just told you about. Sylvan Might. So there's something interesting which I have never seen being brought up. I don't think it is mentioned on Gatherer, but we, you know, as people who live near St. Basil's Cathedral, we did notice. So here in the distance, you can see these onion domes that you cannot mistake for anything else. And if you look at it, it looks so weird. It looks incredibly out of place. To me, it even looks like a kind of a distorted photo. I'm not sure it's the case, but, you know, I always thought that it was very strange. And it's simply because one of those things that you see very often, I'm not saying that it's specifically St. Basil's Cathedral, but, you know, this kind of onion domes, this is a part of the Byzantine architecture, I believe, and, you know, it's not Ravnica, it's Odyssey, right? So it looks incredibly out of place. And also the perspective here, I mean, it's distorted. It's very, very strange. I still don't know anything about this card, about how this thing appeared, so might need to research it again. Next, we have got the Wumpus. So Wumpus is just a funny card, right? It's basically made as a joke, as I can tell. And those Crush of Worms, this is an overkill, right? Because we have got Roar of the Worm, very popular card, yes, that people played in Odyssey again. But this one is just crazy. And I believe it even does see a little bit of play, maybe. Maybe not anymore. Now, Fecundity is a great card. So creatures put into grave into play that carries control may draw a card. This is insanely good, isn't it? So there are some combos with it, of course. Zented Swarm is also a card that I played in the Goblin Charbelcher deck, because the idea was that if your opponent is playing something that can, you know, have some kind of hate against your deck, then you would just attack and then you would combo off. Didn't really work, I will be honest with you. Didn't really work. Kavu Titan was one of those first you know, power creep, I would say. Not really predecessors, but harbingers, okay. And when he was released, we saw that, yes, okay, it's a strictly better Grizzly Bear. Nobody said that Grizzly Bear was good, but the thing is that you would normally expect a 2/2 for 2 mana, 1 green and 1 colorless, right? But here you had this kicker, and the kicker was actually quite fair. Unlike some other crazy cover like Cover Aggressor, I hate it. I remember it so well. Something like 4/3 or 3/4 for 5 mana, and kicker was 4 mana for +1/+1 counter. Insanely bad things. Symbiotic Worm is one of the cards that I purchased specifically for the Reanimator deck. You know, if you're still watching this video, comment below, please, because I don't think that you are. I personally wouldn't, or I don't know. I'm just a little bit tired today and I just want to talk more about the cards that we've got, so it's a very, very relaxed video. You can easily speed up, you know, playing on the 2x speed, and that would still feel a bit slow, I believe. So yeah, if we talk about Roar of the Worm, okay, so here they are together. Some people said is that, because again, Roar of the Worm and this card as well, and the Rootwalla, so all of these cards come from the same deck essentially, and Wild Mongrel, of course. This was the part of Blue-Green Madness. At first it was just mono-green, but then Blue-Green Madness, and the idea was that you would discard Wonder, which we will see later, in case you don't remember it, and then you would very quickly have an army of creatures that are very efficient. They work together well, and you would be able to just attack your opponent with those flying Roar of the Worm creatures, which you would play, of course, for flashback after discarding it to Wild Mongrel, for example, or to Careful Study, which is 1 blue, draw 2, discard 2. So essentially it's something that you already want to do, which is discard. So yeah, it was like the ancestral recall of Odyssey in some way. So anyway, and some people said that Sinclair Spider was made specifically to block the token from Roar of the Worm, because, you know, sometimes they, wizards meaning, think that some cards are too strong, they're too dominant, and then they kind of fix it with a patch, you know, and the patch is just the release of a new card. Not sure if it's the case, but yeah. Here, if we speed up a little bit, Priest of Titania, again, one of the elves, incredibly good. Simplify, I had it for a very long time, you know, and this foils is very interesting because back in the day, today of course I don't trade it anymore, like at all. This is just too much time wasted, and I don't enjoy the process, and people, you know, would usually try to gain some advantage. If you have got a $5 card and they have got a $5 card, they would want you to throw in something extra. I understand that you're supposed to haggle and all of this stuff, but I don't know. I don't have time for that. And to be honest with you, I never did. I almost thought about the importance of time and exchanging time for money and such. So anyway, maybe it's not the right mindset to have. But again, Magic for me was, and of course always will be, of course, a hobby and maybe an investment vehicle in some way. But again, it's definitely not the best investment, as we all know. But it's one of those things that is pleasant to have. Yeah, so Utopia 3 we have already seen, of course. I'm not going to change its position, that's fine. Remember Call of the Herd? This card was more than $10. And, you know, I couldn't understand why back then. Tokens, they were mailed as prizes. They were specific, you know, programs. I'm not sure that they were for, no, not for judges, but some kind of a rewards program existed. And, you know, people were chasing those tokens. They were chasing the Call of the Herd. I don't know. I wasn't really excited about it. Now, of course, I understand the value here, but no. Taunting Elf, such a nice finisher. The Urza's Saga version, I don't think I have it. No, I don't. But it's also cool. And there are so many different things with elves, right? So, you know, you would have this guy, Wildwood Herald, and when this guy attacks, let's say your opponent does not block. What do? You already have a ton of elves. So then there is a risk that you would just pump him for a lot. But if your opponent blocks and you decide not to pump, then he can just die and he can bring a very impressive elf that you're really afraid of. So it's a kind of a lose-lose situation for your opponent. And elves, as it seemed, really had everything. They even had this anti-board wipe card, which is amazing because Collar of the Claw, when it dies, I mean, when all elves die, let's say to Wrath of God or Pyroclasm, you can even tap your elves in response to this mass removal spell using Birchlaw Rangers. And then, when the Herald dies, you can search for this guy, which would usually be a 1-of, in your deck. And for 3 mana, you can just, after the board wipe, get those bears. And those bears would be quite impressive because, you know, elves themselves are usually smaller than 2/2. So it was a very interesting thing. Yeah, as I told you, I did play elves, but only in Pauper. But when they weren't really that prevalent, to be honest with you, when Odyssey, not Odyssey, sorry, but Onslaught came out. In Onslaught, a lot of people, as I remember, played beasts, and people also played clerics, right? White and black, and the beasts were red and green. I also had a beasts deck. Again, this was another ill-advised, by the way, ill-advised purchase that I made from not even a local game store, doesn't matter, but actually vendor just told me about this beast deck and I looked at it. There was Aether Charge, 5 mana, that's a lot, okay, 5 mana for a card that said that when a beast comes into play, I think it's deal 4 damage to your opponent, and I thought, yeah, that's cool, but okay. I was a Timmy, alright, maybe I still am in some way. I love to play this big stuff, and I don't know, it looked like a good combo opportunity. So yeah, talking about efficiency of cards, so this is one of the prime examples of those cards being super efficient. 8/5 for 6 mana, Trample, Regeneration, Legend, okay, that's a small drawback, but still, compare that to Force of Nature. We still love Force of Nature, right? But it's different, right? Now here we have got very expensive in terms of money, Rhystic Studies. One of the things I might get rid of, might just buy listed perhaps or trade for something with the store, because thank you, I don't need this. I don't play EDH. Maybe not a good thing not to play EDH, but no, this is just not for me. And I did play a couple of times. Actually, I enjoyed the old school EDH tournament, but yes, you know, EDH with this unlimited card pool, it's not for me. And also, I just don't like the idea of a commander being able, you know, commander damage. I understand it's not relevant in many games, but still. Battle of Wits, the hilarious card, right? So 200 or more cards in your library. People, of course, joked about it. It was one of those things that... So this again from Odyssey. Look how many themes Odyssey actually had. So it had the graveyard theme. You know, it had Threshold. It had... wait, what else did it have? It had Atog. Yes, it had the Atogs, right? Yes, it had Atog cycle. And it had the cycle of alternative win conditions. You had an alternative win condition for every color, by the way. Maybe not only in Odyssey itself, but in the Odyssey block. So for blue, you had this. For white, you had a Test of Endurance from Judgment, I believe. So 50 life or more. For Mortal Kombat, I mean, for black, you had Mortal Kombat. 20 or more creature cards in your graveyard. So yeah, we had those things. And they are incredibly, incredibly interesting. So again, Odyssey block, such a great block. I know that most people don't like it, but for me it was an amazing one. Then we have got this, which is Chinese, not Japanese. Miscalculation, Boomerang, those drakes. This was from a Homelands booster that I bought, you know. So as I told you, we didn't really have a lot of cards from older sets available, but sometimes, occasionally, we would get some kind of a, I don't know, Amazon drop, as they would say today, or something like this. So we would have those, you know, dump. Yeah, it's called the dump, basically Amazon dump. So yeah, we would get this dump at our LGS, some older sets that people didn't want and didn't care about. One of the sets was Homelands, and for us it was an old set, and you could easily sell it to us at a high premium price. So I did buy this Homelands booster or two, and of course nothing really serious came out of it. So, you know, there are some things that you find a little bit embarrassing, and you know, it's one thing if we talk about, where is this guy? Where is this tiger guy? Here he is, this pious warrior. So, you know, back when I was a teenager, I didn't really understand English grammar that well, and here it said, whenever a pious warrior is dealt combat damage, you gain that much life. So I didn't really understand the difference between the passive voice and the active voice, and I thought that it meant that whenever this card deals damage, not when it is dealt. And now perhaps we can even think that this one is better, right? But yeah, didn't think about that. But again, talking about the embarrassment, so when I could already read English, obviously, I still bought this card, and I'm really ashamed of it. Why? Because it says, gain control of enchanted enchantment. Enchanted enchantment, enchant enchantment, enchant enchanted enchantment. This is what it should read. Enchant enchanted enchantment. And I just missed it. I completely missed it. I thought, why aren't people playing it? Okay, you have a Steel Artifact, 4 mana. You have Control Magic, Steal a Creature for 4 mana. But you can steal an enchantment for 2 mana. No. So embarrassing. Because I bought a playset, I believe, didn't I? Did I buy a playset? I did buy a playset of this completely useless card. What should you do to use it? How can you enchant an enchantment in the first place? That's terrible. That's terrible. You can enchant an enchantment, I guess, but yes. So just wanted to show you some of the pet cards. This was a hit. This was a hit back in the Urza's era. Urza's Mercadian Masks again when I started playing. Because, look, it's such a beautiful bird. It's realistic, okay, I understand. There doesn't seem to be much magical about it. But neither can be said the same thing about this one, right? So it's also not super magical. But this card is beautiful. And when it does damage to your opponent, you draw a card. And this is what you should do in a kind of a control deck. So yeah, a lot of people played it. Later on, of course, we had Finkel, meaning Shadow Mage Infiltrator, but of course this card is still very dear to us. And Exclude is one of those cards I remember again when Invasion came out, and people were a bit skeptical of those cantrips like Exclude, Repulse, but yeah, later we got to appreciate it. Foil. I was always curious about the foil, you know, because they call those cards premium cards, right? So foil is just such a cool thing. And if you check its price, the original one, of course, not the reprints, foil from Prophecy really does fetch a premium. It really is expensive just because it's such a funny thing to have a foil, all right? There are some cards that I like just because of the versatility, just because of what you can do. So I've been trying to make Trade Routes work for a very long time. And yes, I actually played it in a 60 card brawl like Singleton, and I did enjoy it. You know, it was fun. It was really interesting. And of course I played some crazy shenanigans with modern Karoo lands, but yeah, that's different. It's not pre-modern. Counterspell. Counterspell was always a card that I valued a lot. Yeah, I have got several counterspells here. One of the cards that I like is the 7th edition here, but I also do enjoy this one from Arcadian Masks. This one perhaps not so much, and cannot say that I'm a fan of this. Of course I like Mark Poole's 4th edition card. So, Counterspell. Interestingly enough, you know, sometimes people say that cards' value is in many ways based on their age. This is not true, of course. In many ways, if you look at it, it really is about the picture that people prefer. So there can be, I don't know, 10 years difference between different cards. And still, the newer card can be more expensive. It can be because of the print run, it can be because of the reprint of some art or not. Sometimes it's much more complicated than that. Here, yeah, so again, double vortex, circular logic, again, a part of Blue-Green Madness, as is Careful Study, such a great card. The Bouncer, it's a more modern, more new addition to the Blue-Green Madness. Didn't really use him that much, but a nice card nevertheless. And Remore and ADH staple. This is perhaps one of the most important cards of this collection, again, for me personally, for the nostalgic value. Because, in case you haven't seen my video where I talk about the mono blue deck that I played, the Brawl deck, this is the only card, the origin of which I can trace back to that starter that I told you about. The starter, the 2-player starter that I bought back in the year 2000 in August. Because most other cards I either traded or lost or something else happened. But this card I clearly remember because, okay, nobody actually wanted it. I know I was tempted to sell it, but I wasn't, you know, tempted to throw it away or put it in bulk or anything of the sort. And it just so happened, I can't say it's my favorite card, but it just so happened that I always had this card. And this is the card that I have had for 23 years. And it's amazing. Just the fact of it is amazing. And, you know, back then I didn't have a binder. I didn't even have, you know, proper card protectors, as they called them. I just had those basic penny sleeves. And I did play this card quite a lot. And look at it, it's not in such a terrible condition, right? Of course it's not perfect, right? We do have a kind of a ding here, so yeah, it makes it, you know, very far from perfection. But I believe it could have been worse, because this card was played without sleeves at all. It was played on a bench on rainy days when I just played with my friends. I literally was trying to teach absolutely anybody to play Magic, even if they didn't speak English. I translated Magic cards for my friends, sometimes printing them on a printer. So, you know, this Magic game was, of course, my huge passion, always was, and will always be, even if I don't play it that much nowadays. So, I mean, of course, especially, you know, those older cards, like pre-modern cards. So Meditate, yeah, there were some cards that I was just trying to buy, and yeah, it didn't work that well. Turnabout is a card from that deck, Tombstone, right? Not that impressive. Cunning Wish is nice. As I told you, I do like the cards that allow you to manipulate a library in some way. I mean, they have some kind of, not necessarily library manipulation, but yeah, it's a kind of a tool. And Compulsion was one of those cards that I liked. Here the problem is that, of course, first you have to discard a card and draw it, and yeah, it just was something that many people didn't enjoy, but for me it was still good. Of course, later on we got Merfolk Looter, which I started to play instead of this card, but this one is still nice. And Wonder, of course. Wonder is great. So notice that here we have got this grave symbol. It was very surprising to me when I first saw the very first card from Odyssey that I saw. And you know, what's interesting is that I actually first read the spoilers of Odyssey, and only then did I actually play it. But no, it was Torment, I'm sorry. But in any case, yes, Odyssey, the first card I saw from Odyssey was Firebolt. Firebolt seemed as such a great card, and I just saw it in some guy's binder at pre-release, and I asked him how much, and he told me 75 cents, and I said, yes, okay, I will still buy it. The set was not out yet, but you know, I was so eager to get this card. I loved the art by Ron Spencer, I loved the mechanics, everything was good about that card. So again, I am very, very biased here, but it's just great memories for me personally. So Merfolk Looter, not the Merfolk Looter that we need, and you know, neither is this one. We had the 7th edition Merfolk Looter, I forgot, I believe so. And here we have got, yeah, some of the more expensive foils, the Prodigal Sorcerer. So Prodigal Sorcerer, this original Timmy, is of course very impressive. I got it also for not such an expensive amount. But you know, it's interesting because when you think about Magic cards, $40 for a Magic card, yes, that's quite a lot of money. But if you think about $40 in a bigger perspective, yes, if you know, have a lot of such cards, it does it up. But I don't know. Sometimes just the you know, going through the motions, you know, sorting these cards, especially bulk cards, it seems like it's not worth your time. I don't know. In any case, yeah, technically I could sell the whole binder for a certain amount of money, but what would I do with it, really? It's not that this would be exchanged for something of great value. So this is why I decided to keep this, even if I don't use it that much. Horseshoe Crab, remember the combo. So do I have the second piece of this combo somewhere around? I should have it. Where is Hermetic Study? I believe I kind of skipped it. So Hermetic Study, nowhere to be found. No, here it is, of course. So this is Hermetic Study. Enchanted creature gains tap. This creature deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Then we get the Crab, which can untap for 1 mana. And then, to boot, we get Diplomatic Immunity. So you have got this Crab Diplomat that can untap, he can shoot, and he also can be targeted. And even Diplomatic Immunity can be targeted. Here it is, for 1 colorless and 1 blue. Yes, you know, it was a janky combo. I did see it in action. I liked it. This was basically a mono blue control with some alternative costs, right? So such as, you know, what was it? Thwart and foil, yes, as I told you. So alternative cost would be returning islands into your hand, or kind of a weaker version of Force of Will, for which you have to discard more than 1 card. Days was a big thing, you know, it's about tempo, of course. Fact or Fiction was a card that most people, you know, hated and still hate. And, you know, the thing is that your opponent doesn't necessarily know your deck so well. And, you know, sometimes I would play something janky, so when I played it, my opponents just got puzzled and, you know, how should they split the piles? And it was always such a, you know, difficult question to answer. Then, yes, so Confound is that card that I have from that deck that I told you about. You know, this red and blue terrible pre-con. And to honor that, I decided to buy the foil version, you know, just to honor those deck, which I never really liked, to be honest, but yes. Then we have got, yeah, some Ember Labs here looks quite bad. Probably going to buy this one because, yeah, I just have a couple of Modern frame cards. And accumulated knowledge is also nice. I played it in Psychotalk, which we will of course come back to. I also sometimes play Standstill, white and blue Standstill deck. It was quite powerful. And yeah, Brain Freeze was always a dream of mine to make a milling deck or at least a combo deck, but I never actually got to doing that, unfortunately. And can you play Brain Freeze in Premodern? I think you can, yes, you can play Terminals of Agony, right? If I'm not mistaken. Chronotalk, such a cool effect, right? So skip your next turn. Very interesting. So anyway, just wanted to tell you about my collection. Sorry, this video was very long. It definitely took longer than I should have taken. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed looking at the cards, maybe just, you know, scrolling, skipping some parts, and just looking at this collection, maybe even remembering some of the cards that you personally loved and played and maybe still have in your Premodern or some other collection. So thank you for watching, and please look forward to 2 more binders this year. Again, as I told you, we don't really do that much Premodern content, but yeah, I also have a couple of matches recorded, and we can also, you know, try to do this format of deck tech and playing Forge with Premodern. So in case you're watching, and I highly doubt that you are, please do let me know if you would like to see that. And thank you to our patrons as well. This is Plague Doctor, Cam, and Andy. So thank you for being patrons, and I'm out. Bye.